Boy, Carolyn's mad. And it's all about a lie that someone else told. So I'll give you a little history. I'm not sure where to start. As you know, Carolyn's son is living here with us. He's in that camper that we purchased. We're trying to get him back on his feet so he can get an apartment or get a better job and get a better car. I've explained all that before. So when he came here, I promised him a few things, and I want to keep my promise. I promised him that he could have heat, water, electric, some electric. I said some electric, and possibly air conditioning. But he would have to pay for the gas of the generator. So the plan was I was going to give him that old 2,000 watt inverter generator. It was pretty old, but it was still running when I made the promise. Well, shortly after that, it stopped running. And I thought it was the carburetor, so I replaced the carburetor, and it ran for a little while on his camper, and then stopped again. I think it's an electrical issue. There's something in the inverter that is causing a drain or a short. So I bought this generator, this little 1,500 watt one, after I repaired the carburetor, thinking that I could still have the little generator. And that was pretty cheap. It was $2.99, but it can't run the air conditioner. It can't run the freezer. I still had to keep my promise. Well, we can run the air conditioner at night if we wanted to, if we ran this generator with the battery chargers hooked up to the battery, and the batteries are fully charged. We can get through the night on the air conditioner. It's a pain. So he doesn't like doing it, which is fine. I mean, I don't expect him to live off grid regardless of what the commenters say. I'm just trying to make it convenient for him. So I'm trying to work all this out. Well, it hasn't been that hot, so he hasn't really worried about it at nighttime. Well, in the meantime, I moved the solar panels from down here, up here about 10 feet, and miraculously, they started working better. Not miraculously, I mean, I took the time to make sure that all the connections were good and clean and connected well, and got them on a tarp, and I just took a lot of care hooking them up. They've been sitting down here for 3 years, untouched. I mean, I do some maintenance on them, but basically untouched. Well, now I'm getting a lot of amperage out of it. And I tested each one, and each one of them seemed like they were working really well. I'd flip them all upside down, and I'd lift one up at a time, and I'd check the amperage, and it was right there at 5 amps, which is where they're supposed to be. All but this one that is cracked. The glass covering is cracked. It got flipped over, and it's about 3 amps. So I'm expecting a 3 amp drop in the system. Well, when I got them all lifted back up, it's producing 40 amps. I have worked with solar panels in the past, back in probably 2004, somewhere around there, 5. I had a few on top of my roof that I did myself, DIY'd. But back then they had these oldie time charge controllers that it was charging or it wasn't, and there was no LED lights on there where you could, or LED meters or anything. There was nothing on it. It wasn't very fancy. Now the charge controller, like I said, turns on the charge, shuts off the charge from the solar panel so you don't overcharge your batteries. They were really basic back then. When we were nomads, we ran the generator, charged the battery on the generator. Well, we decided we were gonna live off grid and I was gonna get solar panels. So we went to Mom's house. After we bought the property, went to Mom's house, and I started buying the pieces that we needed to have a solar panel system. I started out, I think, with 6 panels, I think. And I bought a charge controller. Well, charge controllers had improved in technology massively. So the first one I bought, I thought was the best technology available, but it wasn't. It was just a regular old charge controller like I had back in the days, but it still had this meter on it. You could read the amps and volts and all that stuff. So it was a little fancier, but it was basically the same technology. I was doing research and I was watching other YouTube channels and I was learning about charge controllers, and I realized, oh, I need an MPPT charge controller. These things are really nice. I mean, these things are really nice. Your panels produce 20 volts. And with those old charge controllers, if your panels are producing 20 volts, it just wastes those voltages. It takes it up to 14, takes your batteries up to 14 volts and just wastes the rest of it. So you got 6 volts just laying around there not doing anything. But the MPPT converts the volts into amps. So those 6 volts are being used just in amperage. So you're getting the same amount of wattage, but with the old ones, you're losing wattage. But the new ones, you're capturing all the energy produced by the solar panels. I bought another one. It said MPPT, but it was a Chinese thing, and when I got it, I realized quickly it wasn't an MPPT. Then I bought an actual MPPT. It was a 60 amp, and it was off Amazon, had really good reviews. I've never thought anything of it. When I got here, we were running the air conditioner in this little truck camper. I always noticed that I had an efficiency problem. The voltage was dropping on my panels. Now, when panels get hot, you do lose voltage. So these are 20 volt panels. As they get hotter, you'll see the voltage drop, sometimes down to 15 volts. I mean, there's a significant drop. So you're losing wattage because volts times amps equals watts. So if you have 20 volts, 5 amps, that's 100 watts. That's a 100 watt panel. But if you have 15 times 5, what is that, 75? So I would come out here and I would cool them off with water. Well, I learned that was a mistake. You shouldn't do that because it can cause micro cracks in the panels. And I see micro cracks in the panels. So I figured I damaged them. Well, I was disappointed. I really wanted to make sure my panels were 100%, but I just lived with the fact that I damaged them. Well, I went ahead and bought 2 more. So I guess by the time I got here, I had 8. And then when I got here, I bought 2 more. That gave us 1,000 watts. That's 10 panels, 100 watts each. And I never paid attention to it again. I was quite satisfied with the energy that we were getting out of it. You want to be able to charge your batteries on the cloudiest days. And I was doing that. Well, then when Carolyn's son got here, we started running this air conditioner, and I started noticing that there was an issue. If I test each panel at 5 amps each, which I did, I had them all upside down, I flipped them up, and they were 5 amps, all but that one, then it's reasonable to think that I'm getting 50 amps. 5 times 10 is 50 amps. But I haven't been. But again, I never really paid much attention to it. I always had an excuse in my head that the panels must be cracked. Even though I tested each one, I kept coming back to the panels must be cracked, and that's why I'm not getting 50 amps. I'm only getting 40. Sometimes it would get up like 40.5 or 40.6, so it got past 40. 40 was basically the stopping point, and I just convinced myself that's what it was. Well, then I started discovering that I could run the well pump off the solar panels at 11 a.m. Since they've been up here, I can run them at 11 a.m. and then by noon, I can turn on his air conditioning because the panels have charged batteries back up. So from 9:30, when the sun actually hits the panels, to 11 o'clock, the batteries are charging from overnight use. I fill the tank with water with the well pump at 11, and then at noon, everything's charged and he's ready to go. Well, today, it's a little bit hotter than it has been. And so I thought he's gonna want air conditioning a little bit early today. So I decided at 10 o'clock instead of 11 o'clock to go ahead and fill the tank. And I didn't run it very long, just a few minutes, maybe 6 or 7 minutes at most. What I did was I ran it, filled the tank, shut it off, waited 20 minutes so the well would have time to fill back up because I had it all the way up. And when I do that, I got that 15 gallon per minute pump, and it sucks the well dry. So I gotta be careful I don't suck the well dry. So I shut it off. 20 minutes later, I came back and filled up Carolyn's sinks and shut it off again. And then sure enough, at 11 o'clock, he said, hey, can I have air conditioning? So the batteries weren't charged, and I turned on his air conditioning and we got up to 40 amps. And again, I'm thinking, I guess this is okay. But I've been down here most of the day watching this thing. It just didn't seem right. There was something wrong. Then it started clouding up. So that means when the clouds cover up the sun, I only get about 10 amps. Clouds clear the sun and it shoots right back up to 40 amps. So there's definitely something just not right. So I figured, well, maybe I'll flip them all upside down again and see which one's not working. There's gotta be 2 of them that's not working because if each one's producing 5 amps and I got 10 of them, that's 50 amps. 2 of them's not working, that's 10 amps. That's giving me 40 amps. But the problem was I didn't want to flip them upside down and find out which ones were bad while we're running the air conditioner because then we wouldn't have enough energy to run it. So I went back up to the house and I started looking for the instructions. Because then I thought, well, maybe I don't have a 60 amp charge controller. Maybe I only have a 40. My memory says I have a 60, but maybe it's not. Maybe I just bought a 40 and I put too many panels on this thing. That's what I was really thinking. So I went back up and I started looking for the instructions, and for some reason, anytime I need a particular instruction, I never have it available. I have a box just full of instructions. Everything we own has an instruction. The lawnmower, both lawnmowers, the little flashy light that we use to keep the predators away from the chickens. I mean, all you do is set that out in the sun. I don't need instructions, but I got all these instructions, but I can't find the instructions to the inverter. I actually have instructions to an old generator that I don't own anymore. So I don't throw away instructions, so I don't know what I do with them. Maybe they're down here in the camper, but I can't find them. So I go through this treacherous process of looking for that charge controller on Amazon again. Well, fortunately, Amazon, I guess, remembers that I bought one years ago. And I said, hey, that's it. And so I looked at it really close, and it said 60 amps. I was like, yes, 60 amps. I knew it was 60 amps, but why is my charge controller saying 40? So I'm back to thinking it must be the solar panels. Well, remember, I just bought 2 solar panels. They're coming this week. On Tuesday. This is Thursday. And I thought, well, I guess I'll just wait until Tuesday to find out if there's something wrong with my charge controller or if there's something wrong with my solar panels. Because when I hook the new solar panels up, I should immediately get 10 more new amps. Well, I had this ingenious idea, and it kind of worked. I thought, wait a minute. If I take the car battery charger and I hook it up to my box over here, so the positive to the solar panel positive and the negative to the solar panel negative, and I run the battery charger off the generator, the charge controller then can have more amps. So I put the battery charger at 10 amps, and I went in and I looked, and the charge controller still said 40 amps. It didn't budge. I had 40 amps before I put the battery charger on it, but there was 10 more amps available. That would have been the same as the solar panels that I'm getting. And the charge controller just didn't see the extra 10 amps. So then it occurred to me, it is the charge controller. For some reason, the charge controller is only producing 40 amps out of a possible 50. So I went back up and I went to the Amazon. I hadn't closed the page out, and I started reading the reviews. And about, I think, 25 people all commented under this one particular comment. And all of them said they sold everyone after July 2021 a 40 amp inverter, even though it says 60 amps. They don't sell 60 amps anymore. It's only 40 amps. Yet the advertisement on the page still says 60 amps. They never changed it. And they're all saying, I have, 60 amps or whatever amount of solar panels, and my charge controller never went over 40. The same thing that happened to me. I just never paid attention to it. What was going on? I just never looked until today. I never looked at why I was only getting 40 amps. So I have that old charge controller still, the one that does not change volts into amps. It's just, I'm going to lose those certain amount of volts. So I hooked it up separately. So I have the MPPT still hooked up. So I hooked the other one up separately. So now I got 2 charge controllers, which you can do. You can run one charge controller. You can run all the charge controllers you want. So I got one MPPT and one non-MPPT. And sure enough, I'm now producing an extra 16 amps. What happened was, when I hooked that second one up, the MPPT dropped to 30 amps. The second controller picked up 16. So 30 plus 16 is 46 amps. So Amazon lied to me and sold me the wrong charge controller. And all this time, I've been losing 10 amps. So now when I get the solar panels, the new ones, I'll have 60 amps. All this time, I thought I'd end up getting 50 amps, but I already got 50 amps. I actually have 46 amps because that one is bad. That one solar panel is bad. So I'll have 56 amps coming in. So I went up there and I bought another charge controller, another MPPT. The same one, it's a 40 amp. That'll give me 80 amps total between the two, because I'd like to have 2 MPPT charge controllers. So I came out and I told Carolyn, and boy, I mean, she's very upset about this. She doesn't like to spend money. And here I just bought 2 solar panels, which she is fine with. She has no problem with me buying solar panels, but she does not like being ripped off by somebody. So she's pretty upset that we were lied to, and now we're having to spend extra money to do this. But I'm glad we got it all worked out, because now we'll have all the electric that we need. Everything that I calculated out in the very beginning will be available to us. I don't know why I didn't catch it. I guess I just trusted what I bought, everything. So the only thing I didn't trust was my memory. So that's the only reason I checked, was because I thought, well, maybe I bought a 40 amp charge controller and messed it all up in my calculations. Because I knew I needed 50 amps of solar panels, because I did the math. I knew what I needed. But now that the other charge controller is running, we got the clouds and we're getting plenty of volts to run the air conditioner, and amps, I should say, amps, to run the air conditioner. So I guess we're a little bit better off. But I'm a little frustrated that it took me almost 3 years to realize my mistake. I guess these things happen. You know, I'm not an expert. I just learn as I go. And when somebody literally lies to you, it took me a long time to figure out that I had been lied to. So if you click this up next box, it'll take you to the panel where I was talking about all the wiring. So I hope I can inspire you to work through your problems when you're living your dreams. Thanks for watching.